Let me tell y'all something. This AP the plug here with the ticket plug. Look, I have the easiest way online that you can flip your bread. We sell tickets to concerts, comedy, festivals, sports, theater, Broadway, all that type of stuff. And it's real easy. I can show you how to do it. Go to thetickettrap.com. Again, thetickettrap.com.
If we can switch gears just a little bit to politics, I want to ask you about former President Trump. In your opinion, it's been, well, not opinion, but it's been two attempts on his life. Why do you think they are, or the individuals are trying to take Trump out? Is he anti-establishment, or is it just some nuts just trying to, do what they're trying to do to make a name for themselves?
Well, let's see. For the last 5 years, you have heard a constant stream of rhetoric from the Democratic Party, from their national committee all the way down to local level officials, about how evil Trump is. And Maxine Waters was going out talking about we have to, fight this and burn this down. And Kamala Harris was raising bond money for the people who got busted for burning down a lot of the black businesses over the George Floyd BLM stuff. And by the way, they weren't black people that were doing it. It was a bunch of little liberal white kids going out for the most part doing this. And you've got this steady egging on. You've got this steady rhetoric about it's okay. So, you say something long enough, tell a lie long enough, loud enough, you get anybody to believe it. You keep up with this psychological, okay, it's okay to do this. This is what you ought to do. The public has become inured to this, and you get the weak minds who will try to do it. Now, what has happened, I find unusual in one sense, because the handwriting has long been on the wall. Robert Kennedy got assassinated as a candidate for president. Mm-hmm. George Wallace, racist as he was, got paralyzed and put in a wheelchair when he was a presidential candidate. All right. You have other instances where candidates for president have been put in jeopardy. You've got a situation where this is the second time the same candidate for president has been put in a situation where assassination attempts were in progress. Mm-hmm. Now, what you hear is, well, he's not the president, so we aren't taking the precautions. Well, in the first instance, they drew down his standard Secret Service detail to go deal with Jill Biden having essentially a tea party, and they wanted extra security for that, or a cocktail, tea party. And that's absolutely absurd. So what I'm looking at is, I don't think Secret Service or anybody over them is complicit in planning this with anybody, but they know, based on the rhetoric that's been out there for 5-6 years about this, there are likely to be crazies who will find it justified to do this. And what's going on is they're ignoring it and hoping that what is almost the inevitable will occur. And they can say, oh, it's a tragedy. We were remiss. We should have done something about it. Now, one thing that I am very disturbed about is both of these would-be assassins were featured in BlackRock commercials. Yep. How come? What is the connection? Is it sheer statistical coincidence, or is there something else? It's beginning to look a little weird. But if you want to get a clear explanation, go back 90 years. Go to Deutschland, Germany, and you see what the Nazi Party did. You find that Adolf, and in this case Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, Nazi minister of propaganda, we're talking about the danger of misinformation. So they set up effectively an anti-misinformation bureau. Waltz has been talking about free speech should be restricted because of the danger of misinformation. That's not how our system works, but that's what he's saying. And Kamala Harris is pontificating about she's going to set up a bureau of misinformation, the exact same thing the Nazis did 90 years ago in 1934. Also, we have Strength Through Joy, a specific program that Kamala is proposing. And we look back 90 years to Germany in 1934, and lo and behold, the specific program the Nazis set up, Strength Through Joy, with exactly the same structure and purpose. We look at the Second Amendment stuff where she lied during the debate where she said she's a gun owner and she's not going to do this. And yet on X for the last week, they've been playing clip after clip where she says, first thing, we're going to have expanded red flag laws. Okay, they already have them. In universal background checks, they already have them. And a mandatory buyback first thing of all semi-auto weapons, and a prohibition on buying assault rifles, which she's talking about semi-auto stuff that's 100 years old, because a real assault rifle is a machine gun, and those aren't exactly out there freely available, and et cetera, et cetera. She's lying about it. But when we look back 90 years to 1934 in Pomerania, Stuttgart, and let's see, oh, two other of the German principalities, some crazies went off and shot up some of the open markets. So they had Bavaria. Let's see, they had some draconian gun control laws put in place to disarm the German public, except Nazi party members. And a series of things that you can see duplicated almost word for word in the conceptualization of how they were presented to the German public that you're seeing right now. So it looks kind of a little scary, like why are we having this Nazism come back, not on behalf of Trump, but on the other side, and they're engaged in what, when I was studying it, I think it would have been Propaganda 172B at UCLA. We had those courses back then. That would be what we now call flipping the script, the clues, accuse the other side of what you're doing. So what is this? Why do we have mainstream media instead of saying there is a contention on one side, such and such? It says one side lying, as they have always done, falsely says such and such. That's not news. That's editorialization. So things are beginning to click in place, and what do we have? I would put it to you that why politics looks so crazy right now is because it's not really politics. Now, I'm not getting on gay folk. I guess they can get their freak on in their bedroom all they want to. That's legal. But what I am talking about is this LGBTQIA thing is being used to set up a cult, a philosophical cult that is being pushed as the official faith or religion of the United States these days, and they're trying to spread it around the world. To understand it in context, it's like Buddhism. Buddhism has no God. You can have one, but you don't have to be a Buddhist, and there's no designated one. So what we have with the rainbow cult is it's godless, or you can have one or not, but it's a philosophy, and the philosophy is anti-masculinity and also anti-character. No guilt, no shame are the primary precepts of this particular philosophy. Do anything you want to. You owe no one anything at all. You don't have to be courageous or brave. You don't have any duty. You have no honor. You have no obligation of making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose. Nothing. You're supposed to be taken care of from cradle to grave. There's supposed to be no competition. There's participation ribbons. Everybody's to be protected, but Big Brother, I guess Big Sister now that they trannied out, is supposed to protect you, but nobody's supposed to protect you from it because you are going to be oppressed. And I remember a professor I had in 1967. She said America is in grave danger of becoming a fascist nation. Not because of some jackboot wearing goose stepping uniform thugs, but because of, as she put it, some pink panty wearing long haired beatniks who would quickly impose the worst elements of fascism on your republic because they're scared, they want to be protected, and they want to protect you from being everything that you considered normal, dignified, and stuff that showed good character. And that's basically what you're looking at right now, 50 some years later, 55 years later.
I want to talk about the dynamic because there's been pandering in politics since the beginning of time, but within the last 8 years, we've seen it more than ever. In particular, there's been like a line drawn within black people as if you vote one way, you're not black, and if you don't vote for this, you're not black. And we've seen celebrities, and we don't got to name the celebrities. We know who they are. They get on their social media platforms every day and talk about you don't like black women if you don't like Kamala Harris. They seem to be trying to manipulate black people to choose one side without hearing any type of policy, without hearing anything that's going to happen for them. But if they don't choose this side, their black identity is now in question. Can you talk about that dynamic that we've seen in particular last 8 years?
50-some years ago, I was working as an intern for a Washington, D.C. think tank. It was called the Center for National Policy Review, and it operated out of Catholic University. We were reviewing the causality for the then current situation in America relative to black power and such, and what black power was going against. Now, one of the things I did is for quite a few weeks, I was up late at night in the Library of Congress looking at the microfilm copies of the slave pamphlets. That's what we call them. They were pamphlets that were sold, basically how to raise slaves for fun and profit. That would be an infomercial late night on cable now. And one of the things they said that was most effective is put the elements of slavery in the slave's culture. So the slave mothers raised their children to be ideal slaves. They would domesticate them for you. The Democratic Party was founded in the beginning of the second decade of the 19th century, way back in the early 1800s, for the specific purpose of protecting and spreading slavery. They caused the Civil War. They started it. They set up Jim Crow, segregation, and resistance to ending segregation. They were the party of the slave owners. They were the guys that came up with put the elements of slavery into slaves' culture so they will make slaves of themselves. And there really was a Willie Lynch, but it wasn't a letter. He wrote a series of pamphlets starting from 1706, I think, was the first one published that I read on microfilm, up to 1728. He lived in Bermuda and he raised slaves, and he would tour the English colonies of North America and the Caribbean and get paid pretty good sums for the time for giving lectures on how to raise slaves for fun and profit. And what the Democratic Party is essentially done with what you're talking about, young sir, is evoke these things they put in the black culture 180, 190, 200 years ago to make them produce ideal slaves for their plantations. They are evoking those things to bring the slave back out of himself. The descendants of slaves are making themselves slaves. They live on a mental plantation that the Democratic Party puts out. And the party of the old slave masters has become looked at as the salvation for this type of black. Politics throughout this country's history, throughout the English historical context before that, has always been a matter of not absolute loyalty by any one group to a party, but a bounce around of who's going to do most in return for my support given by a vote to them. But unfortunately, black folk think they're owned by the Democratic Party. And you're in a situation where no matter what the Democratic Party does not do for the black constituents they have, they'll still get their votes. So they have no incentive to change or do anything for the black voters. They are guaranteed the black vote. The Republican Party, on the other hand, has been the subject of negative propaganda for the last 60-some years. So no matter what the Republican Party does to try to reach out, they won't get any response. So you're stuck with the stupid position that you put yourself in, where neither political party has an incentive to do a damn thing for you.
Right.
That's a dead-end game. And if you look at every other ethnic group in this country, I don't care what they are, sometimes they vote Democratic as a bloc, sometimes they vote Republican, and every now and then, just so one party gets thrown off, they say, oh, screw you, we're going to vote for the other side, just to show you what it feels like when your well runs dry and you don't have your water, meaning us. We don't do that. And we've got some people that never were part of the militant movement that took over from civil rights in the mid-'60s that really advanced things. We had some little cowards who snuck in behind what other people who had a lot more balls going for them did. And now they are creatures of the Democratic Party, and they're trying to impose a situation where the black family is destroyed, black masculinity is suppressed, if not destroyed, and they're reinstating the same party setup they had, not party, but setup they had on the plantations, where you always had your mammies running the Negroes, not black men. I can remember pamphlet after pamphlet, 1843, 1856. It says, whatever you do, gentlemen, even if he is your favorite gun bearer or your valet or your favorite companion that you've known for life, never interact with your Negroes through a man. Always pick a slave woman to be the interacting party. Pick comely bed wenches and entertain your guests so you can find out what they're up to for economic advantage. If they prove of use, promote them until when they start getting gray in the hair, make mammies of them and have them in charge of the Negroes on your plantation. That's just exactly what you're looking at. And we are getting stuff that is absolutely insulting. Look at the one for 2020. Take your booties to the poll. Now, why in the hell would a black man be presumed stupid enough to look at some naked behind as a reason to go vote for somebody? And by the way, it was Valerie. We do a thing on Friday We interviewed the woman that put it on, and it turned out when we looked up the people that she had hired to do this, 1/3 of them weren't even girls. They were trannies. So black men are supposed to look at their behind and go vote for somebody. And if you noticed how you see all the time some kind of swishy flaming guys out there, they're doing line dances out in front of something like that's supposed to be an incentive to go vote, not how much you're making on your job, not what your taxes are, not what your medical benefits are, not what a whole lot of things are, not what the military posture of the country is. And a lot of our folk are in the military. We don't look at that. We're supposed to watch a bunch of fools be monkeys on a little silver chain and dancing and singing. And Kamala's always dancing. And then look, did you see that mess a few weeks ago where that fool was talking about everybody knows we're entitled to 20 acres and a mule? You damn fool, everybody black for the last 150 years, everybody else in this country knows it's 40 damn acres. Mm-hmm. That's more BS. Like, I cook my greens, I clean my greens in the bathtub. In the dorms where everybody's been washing their nasty ass up in the, you're gonna fix your greens up in a bathtub in a dorm? Your mama would beat the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. Or, excuse me, I was in the dorm smoking and I inhaled. And I was listening to Tupac. When that heifer was in the dorms, Tupac was 10 years old. When he released his first single, he was 21 and she was a prosecutor in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. Lying heifer, are you smoking dope when you prosecuting for dope? Or are you in the dorms when you're supposed to be out of law school? Do we believe this crap? And I talked to her daddy. I sat next to, my ex-wife sat next to her dad for 2.5 hours at a banquet that the Governor General of Jamaica had invited us to. And we talked to him. He said he had no black ancestors. He had some dark-skinned Hindus for grandmothers, and he had some white ancestors that owned a lot of slaves. Brownstown in Jamaica, they named it after this slave owner who had 4,000 some odd slaves. So Kamala's got slave owners in her background, not through any slaves, but from the white side. So how the hell does she become black? And even if she is, guess what? Her parents weren't trying to be long-term visitors. They were just on temporary visiting status with academic visas that weren't long-term. They had no intent to be citizens. They just came through here and they met up in Berkeley area at a university campus. They got together and nature took its course. They had one baby born 1964, where my late former mother-in-law was a pediatrics nurse, and where my ex-wife was born during the same 12-month period, and then they had another kid in 67. Moms got on up out of there not long after that, the relationship that is, and when Kamala was no older than 12, and it looks like, depending upon how you read her yearbook, a lot younger than that, up in Canada, where Mama had a job in oncology, meaning cancer research, and Dad was temporarily down there at Berkeley, where he left, and he was there when I was going back and forth up to Berkeley's campus from UCLA. Remember, I'm basically just about 3-4 years younger than him. So he was a grad student and I was an undergrad, and he was pushing communist stuff in socialism, teaching economics up there for a brief while, getting his doctorate degree. And what is this chick's connection to America? She doesn't have a parent who's an American resident or citizen. She certainly doesn't have any grandparents. She's got Hindu in a background and Irish in a background, which is, and she got raised in Canada. And if you want to get the difference between Canadians and Americans, look at that adult cartoon South Park where they keep ridiculing it, and you'll get the idea. Canadians are not citizens, they're subjects. They belong to the King of England. And it's part of the British Commonwealth. And even if she came and had black in her, she would have been from St. Elizabeth Parish, where they had bright and white in Jamaica. And I've been to Jamaica an awful lot. And you hear somebody speaking patois, turn around, and there's a Chinaman. And when you talk to him, his parents are from Hong Kong, part of the British Empire, part of the British Commonwealth before the communists got it. Okay, so you talk to somebody, where are they from? They're from Kenya. Where is this one from? Pakistan. Where is this one from? India, the Commonwealth. Where is this one from? This guy is in security for Jamaica, and he's from Australia. My ex used to be a fine thing, movie star. She'd always have a lot of bling when we traveled, and I can remember several times somebody looked like James Bond wanted to know, did she have a passport? Yes. And I said, excuse me, that's my wife. We're American citizens. And they'd apologize. They thought she was a highbright trying to get out of Jamaica. I had to write a series of letters for the chauffeur for the prime minister. He was in his 60s, and he wanted to visit his son who was going to school in America. And he couldn't, because Jamaicans can't freely leave Jamaica when they want to, like you can here. You have to get permission from the government. See, that's the kind of background, and that's what we've got here. We got faked out on. Oh, she's an AKA. She does that ski-wee thing, so that's supposed to make her black. And she's the first black Greek who is vice president of the United States and candidate for U.S. president. That's a damn lie. The Alpha 85A has that distinction because Hubert Humphrey, a 6'4" tall white boy, badly balding with blonde hair, blue eyes, was made in the late 1930s up in Minnesota.